All right, let's get into it. We're signing things all the time, right? A new phone, a new job, maybe a new apartment. But have you ever stopped to think what happens when a simple, totally human error sneaks into one of these super important documents? Well, that's exactly what we're going to break down. You know that feeling. I'm sure you do. That little twist in your gut right as you're signing, that split-second thought of, wait, did I miss something? It's a feeling we all get. And we're always told to worry about the tricky fine print and all the complicated legal words. But honestly, sometimes the biggest landmines in a contract aren't hidden clauses at all. They're just simple mistakes. A wrong number, a wrong assumption, a total misunderstanding. So, to really get a handle on how these little mistakes can completely tear an agreement apart, I want you to think of a contract like a building. A strong one. It stands on three huge foundational pillars. But if even one of those pillars is shaky, well, the whole thing could come crashing down. So let's take a closer look at that first pillar. This first one is what's known as a unilateral mistake. That uni at the beginning just means one. So this is a mistake that's made by just one person in the agreement. Let's make this super clear with an example. Imagine you've just negotiated a great deal on a car for $10,000. You're thrilled, the seller's happy, everyone's good. But then when they're writing up the contract, they make a little typo. A big one, actually. They write $1,000 instead of $10,000. You notice it right away. So what happens now? Legally speaking, this is a textbook unilateral mistake. One party, in this case the seller, is completely mistaken about a really important part of the deal, the price. So here's the big question. Do you get to drive off with a car for just $1,000? Can you actually force the seller to honor that typo? Well, the answer really hangs on one very critical detail. And here's what it comes down to. If you, the person who didn't make the mistake, genuinely had no idea about the typo, then the contract often stands as written. But, and this is the important part, if you knew it was a mistake and you tried to snap up the deal anyway to take advantage of it, a court can say, nope, no deal, and the contract can be thrown out. It's all about what you knew and when you knew it. Okay, on to our second pillar. This one is called a common mistake. This is what happens when the mistake isn't just on one side of the table, it's a mistake that everyone involved is making together. Let's paint a picture. Say you hire your absolute favorite artist to paint your portrait. You agree on the price, the details, everything. You're over the moon. The artist's agent is excited too. But there's a problem. What neither of you knows is that just yesterday, the artist decided to pack up their brushes for good and retire. See, this is a common mistake. It's common because both you and the agent made the exact same incorrect assumption that the artist was still working and available. You were both on the same page, it just happened to be the wrong page.
But here's the thing. For a common mistake to actually break a contract, it can't be about some tiny detail. The mistake has to be absolutely fundamental to the entire point of the agreement. I mean, an artist's ability to paint is pretty fundamental to a contract for a painting, right? Since that core idea is now impossible, the whole contract is probably kaput.
And that leads us to our third and final pillar. I like to call this one the crossed wires mistake, but the legal term is mutual mistake. This is what happens when two people think they agree, but they are actually talking about two totally different things. This is the classic example, and for good reason. You say to someone, "I'd love to buy your classic Ford Mustang." In your mind, you're picturing a beautiful vintage 1965 model. The seller hears you and thinks, "Great, they want to buy my beloved 2005 model." You both shake hands, smiling, thinking you've just made a deal. This is a perfect mutual mistake. See, unlike the artist example where you are on the same wrong page, here, you're on two completely different pages. Your minds were never in the same place. You used the same words, sure, but you were fundamentally at odds about what you were even buying and selling. There was never really a true agreement. So let's just pull this all together for a second. Think of it like this. For a unilateral mistake, only one person is off base, and the whole thing hinges on whether the other person knew about it. For a common mistake, you're both wrong about the same thing, but it only matters if that thing is absolutely essential to the deal. And finally, for a mutual mistake, you're both wrong, but about different things, which means you never really agreed in the first place.
Okay, so we've seen how these pillars can get shaky. We know the different ways a contract can be flawed. So what do we do with this information? How do we make sure our own agreements are built on solid ground?
Honestly, it all boils down to one word: clarity. Clarity is your absolute best defense against all of this. Before you sign anything, just confirm the big stuff in writing. And never, ever assume the other person knows what you're thinking. A simple question like, hey, just to be crystal clear, we are talking about the 1965 Mustang, correct? Can save you so much heartache later. If a word is fuzzy, like classic car, just define it. That's how you make sure every single one of your pillars is rock solid. So I'll leave you with this question. Think about the last deal you made or the last contract you signed. How clear was everything? Were there any little assumptions you made that you never actually said out loud? Look, the goal here isn't to make you paranoid. It's to make you confident. Because the strongest agreements aren't built on hope. They're built on clarity.